Now today, the Prime Minister is going to use a speech to business leaders to drum up their support and warn dissenting Tory MPs that it's too late now to change her plans before Sunday's European Council summit. Meanwhile, the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, has said that a second Brexit referendum is a possibility. However, speaking to Sophie Ridge yesterday, Mr Corbyn said it wasn't an option for right now.
So do you think there should be a second referendum? What do you think?
I think it's an option for the future, but it's not an option for today, because if we put a referendum tomorrow, what's it going to be on? What's the question going to be?
What would you like the question to be on? Would you like Remain to be on the ballot paper?
I think that the tests against the government have to be put now, and that's what we're doing. The government must go back and renegotiate and see what it comes back with, and Parliament must look at that time. I think to do anything else now would be to ignore the reality of the situation, is that this government has had all this time to negotiate and hasn't really achieved anything.
Speak to Labour's Shadow Secretary for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, Rebecca Long-Bailey. She joins us now live from Salford. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. And interesting hearing from your leader, Jeremy Corbyn, yesterday, saying a second referendum is perhaps something for the future. It's not something for right now. What are your views? What kind of time frame are we working to? A lot of people are saying we need something now.
Well, look, we need a deal that puts our economy first, and Theresa May's deal certainly doesn't do that. It might offer some short-term certainty for business in the transition period, but beyond that, there's very, very little detail. So what we want to see is for this botched deal to be withdrawn, for a renegotiation to take place around an alternative that brings Parliament and the country together, and we've set that out. But if that cannot occur and we don't have a general election when the deal is voted down in Parliament, then of course we've stated at our recent party conference that all options would be on the table. But of course that's a hypothetical point in the future. At the moment we want to secure the best deal that we possibly can that's in the interests of our economy.
It's interesting, you talk about a botched deal. The part of the agreement that talks about the future relationship is still being fleshed out. We were talking to our European correspondent, Mark Stone, who said that it might have been 7 pages at the weekend. It's going up. That bit is still a work in progress. And the head of the CBI was on Sophie Ridge on Sunday yesterday, and she said that actually the agreement as it stands now, Theresa May's draft agreement, has benefits for business. For example, it takes a no deal off the table, which would be a disaster for this country.
Well, no deal is not an option for the Labour Party, and indeed many of my colleagues across
option for the Prime Minister either. She's taken that off the table in this agreement.
Well, yeah, we'll be working very vigorously to avoid this, but the deal that we've got before us, as I say, you know, businesses have welcomed it tentatively. It offers short-term certainty in the transition period, but beyond that, there's very little detail at all. And let's remember, businesses don't just invest for the next 2 years. They want to be able to make those long-term investment decisions, and they need confidence to be able to do that. And they're not getting that. And in relation to the comments that we've received from other businesses, quite worryingly, we had the head of KPMG stating that there was nothing in the deal that reassured business. We've had the head of Brexit at Deloitte stating that they're advising their businesses to plan for all scenarios. So this is not the point that we should be at today. We should be able to offer some clarity and certainty to our business community and indeed the rest of the country about the direction of travel for further negotiations on the agreement itself.
Well, the Prime Minister says she's going to try and do that today. And if you look at the draft agreement, there are some things in there that Labour say they wanted. For example, the protection of employment rights, the retention of environmental standards, taking the option of a no deal off the table. These are things Labour wanted. So why are you opposing them? What is Labour going to propose today that's any different? Is it basically staying in the EU?
Well, on employment rights and environmental protections, we've got in the deal a non-regression clause. Now, that states that we can't regress beyond where we are today, but that's not good enough, I'm afraid. We want to be able to ensure that we keep, you know, to an extremely high standard in relation to workers' rights and environmental protections, and there's nothing to suggest that that would be an option in the future. In relation to other elements of the deal, we've got, you know, a temporary customs union, for want of a better phrase. We wanted a permanent customs union with a right for Britain to be able to negotiate future trade deals. We also wanted more clarity on what our final deal in relation to the single market would be, to give assurances to our business community in relation to services and the non-tariff barriers that they might face in relation to regulation, for example.
Well, how is Jeremy Corbyn today going to reassure business? Because he has said that Labour would vote against this agreement in Parliament, and that risks a no-deal Brexit.
No, we would work very vigorously to avoid a no-deal Brexit, as I've said. What we want to see is for the Prime Minister to go back to renegotiate this deal so that she can bring the country and Parliament together. As it stands, she can't even bring a cabinet together, and that's a very chaotic and worrying situation to be in.
Is this not fantasy politics? Because the EU have categorically said, this is the agreement. We've done the negotiation. This is it. So you're not playing fantasy politics, say to the Prime Minister, go back and get another deal. It's not an option.
No, it's not fantasy politics at all. The EU has renegotiated previous deals in the past. The Lisbon Treaty, CETA are two examples of that. They want a deal that works in their economic interest, as we want a deal that works in our economic interest. We haven't got that with the withdrawal agreement. We've got a temporary set of principles that deal predominantly with transition, but don't look further than that and don't provide certainty to our business community or indeed our communities at large who need investment and need guarantees that they are going to have well-paid jobs in the future.
OK, if there was a second referendum vote, the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, said yesterday he didn't know how he would vote. Do you know how you'd vote?
Well, it depends what the second referendum would say. I mean, I've already
one of the
stated
questions was to
on this
remain.
programme previously that Well, I have concerns that, for example, if we had a second referendum with this government in charge, they would hold the pen on what the questions in that referendum would be. Would it be a referendum on the final deal, or would it be a rerun of the referendum? And we've stated very, very clearly that, you know, we respect the result of the referendum. But if we got to a situation where no deal was on the table, and that's a very hypothetical situation when we've tried to force a general election, we've tried to force the Prime Minister to renegotiate the deal, then we'd keep all options on the table, and we would have to judge the feeling of the public mood at that time and indeed discuss that quite vigorously within our party.
OK. All right, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. Shadow Business Secretary Rebecca Long-Bailey, thank you very much for your time this morning.